When I was 4, my mom caught me dressing in my brother's clothes, which was unlike any of the very feminine clothes I usually wore. She would catch me grabbing my crotch, mimicking my dad. She used to yell at me, "You're not a boy, stop acting like it." And those words hurt so much. I didn't understand why. But that was the first sign. After that, it would affect me about once or twice a year, popping up and making me uncomfortable on holidays and times when I had to dress up as a girl. And the more time passed, the more I began to realize what it was. I really felt like I was a boy. By puberty, I was more than just a tomboy, and personal, intimate time was difficult because I was unable to interact with my feminine body. I had anatomical dysphoria, which means the hatred of your own body, and I never truly knew why, but I would stuff socks into my pants, and when I was alone, pretend that I had a penis. I felt more comfortable in those 10 to 15 minutes as a boy than I ever did as a girl. Camp was terrible for me. Living with young women when you feel as if you're a man brings you to the darkest places of your mind. I was never as depressed as when I was at camp. I think everyone there knew that I was a lesbian at the time, but I don't know if anyone imagined that I would turn out to be a man. And I fear that my presence in the cabins that I lived in could now greatly confuse some of the girls that I lived with and make them uncomfortable. I know everyone thought I was a lesbian, but I don't think anyone ever imagined I was a transsexual. My friends and family tried very hard to change me into a proper girl. People used to always ask me if I was a boy or a girl in the between stages. It hurt me, but only because I had a guilty pleasure of knowing that a stranger thought I might be a boy. It made me happier than I could ever explain to anyone. And when I look back, it still does. The hardest part of my transition was my dad abandoning me. He told me that I was a waste of a pregnancy. I should have been aborted. And he was promised a daughter, so I had no right to take her away. The hardest part of my surgeries was explaining to my mother that when you feel so dark inside because your body is so wrong and it just doesn't match how you feel, you're willing to risk everything. I had to explain to her that I could die, that there was a good chance of my second surgery that I would. She had to understand that I was dying for who I was. Eventually, she understood. I think it's easy to say that by far, my mom has been my biggest supporter. Although in the beginning things were hard on her, she stuck through it all. And my dad was my biggest supporter. He hasn't accepted it at all and has pretty much abandoned the thought of me as his child. It's hard. I know there are. I run an online and phone organization for trans youth, and I get calls all the time about people who are afraid to transition or don't know what to do or how to tell their families. It's really hard, but makes me grateful for the experience that I've had. That someone can live a normal life as a transsexual or transgender man or woman. T doesn't limit you, it gives you more possibilities. Not anymore. When I first came out, I did, but now it never crosses my mind. It just feels right. On the contrary, actually, I have an advantage. More transfer job, better schooling options. People always want to be around a person with a good story. It adds depth to their environment. That's most likely why I got into every college I applied to, even with fairly terrible grades. Don't ever live with the notion that it gets better. If you do, it won't. Your mindset should be that it is better. Life being who you are is always better than living a lie. You will feel more comfortable and safe in your own skin, but you will face tragedy and bullies. But if you're being true to yourself, then those things won't affect everything, because they shouldn't.